Is global food production in crisis? We're told the world is not replenishing the soil of nutrients fast enough following any harvest, especially in Africa particularly. And we are short on fertilizers. Potash is one of those that you may have heard is the sort of additive that's needed in soil following a harvest in order to replenish those nutrients. Add to this, of course, the war in Ukraine that's likely to take out some agricultural products this year and next year as well. And of course, also as well, what's happening in Russia with sanctions means that a lot of their wheat won't come onto the international market either. Well, joining us now is the Chief Executive of Emmerson PLC, Graham Clark. Emmerson is an AIM-listed company that owns the Kemesset potash project in northern Morocco. Graham, it's good to be able to catch up with you. Let's begin at the beginning and ask, what is potash and how does it fit into this idea of fertilizing the soil after harvesting?
Okay, so potash is one of the three vital nutrients that all crops need to grow, no matter where they are in the world, alongside nitrogen and phosphorus. And typically fertilizers are applied as an NPK, so N for the nitrogen, P for the phosphorus, and the K for the potassium. So it's vital. All plants need these nutrients to grow in a greater or lesser extent, depending on the soil type, the type of the crop. And it's very important to maximize crop yields that fertilizers are applied, as you say, to replenish the nutrients in the soil, which are taken by the plant as the plant grows.
And how is it produced?
So the potash is found in many deposits around the world, and all of them were originally laid down sometimes tens of millions of years ago, as a result of a saline lake evaporating over a long period of time. For example, the potash in North Yorkshire, where I'm at the moment, on the northeast coast of the UK, that deposit was laid down around 250 million years ago over a period of 10 million years as a large inland sea, which actually now stretches all the way across to Germany. Evaporated, was replenished, evaporated, and it laid down a series of different salts, some of those containing the potassium that has been mined at Cleveland Potash and is planned to be mined as part of the Anglo-American Woodsmith project. And if you look today, the Dead Sea in Israel, where potash is produced by Israel Chemicals Limited and Arab Potash Corps in Jordan, the lake is actually evaporating today. So it's exactly the same process that happened millions of years ago. So the underground potash mines are basically mining an evaporated lake that was left millions of years ago. And today that's actually being done, from the lake itself in Israel and Jordan.
So it's not a finite resource. So it is being produced and made, if you like, as we speak.
That's correct, yes. And then, the deposits, we actually take the potassium-bearing salts out and we separate the potash, the potassium, typically from salt, which is the remaining sort of byproduct or waste product from the process.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you what the process is. You've given a very sort of brief introduction to it there. Is the production reliant heavily on energy? What I'm getting at here, of course, is the rise in the cost of energy. Does that put the price up? Does it make it a more difficult product to produce?
Yeah, so there is quite a large energy requirement. So typically from an underground mine, the mineral comes out and there will be the percentage of potassium in there would range from maybe 10 to 30%. That has to be separated out, so it's crushed, and then either through flotation or decomposition, you separate out the different minerals, and then you have to crystallize that and dry it and granulate it into a product. So there is quite a high energy requirement, and obviously with rising energy prices, that will add to the cost of production of the end product.
Yeah. So how do we measure the price of potash? What is it, the current price? I guess it's going up.
Well, it's yes, it's gone up quite dramatically over the last 12 months. So if you go back sort of 12 months, potash prices had been in the sort of $250 to $300 a ton range for probably the previous 3 or 4 years. And now the sort of highest spot prices for granular potash in Brazil is close to or just above $1,000 a ton. So there's been a significant rise in price. And this has been based it was triggered initially by rising crop prices, which is usually, rising fertilizer prices typically goes hand in hand with rising crop prices. But obviously, recent events has really pushed the price higher still.
Let's talk a little bit more then about the food side of this, and how much emphasis you wish to place on this idea that we're not actually replenishing the soil fast enough. I think it was an MIT report out about 4 or 5 years ago talking about this. I was reading one paper from a professor of soil science at Newcastle was talking about this and just saying, especially in places like Africa, that the soil is not being replenished of nutrients fast enough. Is that still the case, or have we got on top of it as a world getting together to try and ensure food security?
I think progress is being made, but if you sort of look at some of the fundamentals behind the situation, the world's growing population sort of dictates that by the year 2050 we have to be producing 60% more food than we're producing today. That's globally, and that is from less arable land. If over the last 40 years, the amount of arable land available is reduced by 33%. So there is reduced land. We've got to produce more food. The only way to do that is to maximize yields, and the only way to do that is to make sure that we apply fertilizers to ensure the nutrients are available to the crops. You sort of mentioned Africa. Africa has a large portion of the underutilized agricultural land in the world, and the average application rates of fertilizers in Africa today is only running at 10% of the levels applied in North America, which is where most of the advanced agricultural techniques are in place. So there is still a significant gap if we're to meet the demands as we go forward with the world's growing population.
And of course, also one has to consider climate change as well. Presumably, we hear a lot every year about the fact that we're losing crops to excess wind, rain, fire, whatever it might be. I guess this just adds to compounds the problem.
Yes, it does, and that so a poor harvest caused by weather or whatever means that there's less sort of grains or the main inputs for food production available, which puts prices up and results in sort of temporary shortages. A better yield in the following harvest offsets that. So the sort of general trend is we need to grow more, and that's interrupted through different events, weather events or whatever. So it's an ongoing battle to ensure that there's sufficient food being produced.
To what degree as well is the what's going on at the moment in Ukraine going to disrupt the world? I mean, when looking at what's happening in Ukraine, we have to consider the humanitarian aspect of this. And I don't want to get into the subject without mentioning the fact that we're all obviously glued to the headlines, and we feel for those that have been disrupted by what's going on. But we're here to talk about the effects of all this. And I know that Ukraine has for decades been called the breadbasket of Europe. It exports a lot of wheat. To what degree is what's going on in Ukraine at the moment and the sanctions against Russia going to disrupt the harvest this year?
Well, just to sort of echo your comments, obviously what's going on is a human tragedy, and we should all be aware of that. But it is going to have a significant impact, sort of in the short term, with the food exports, the grains, the wheat that would come from Ukraine. But also, we need to bear in mind, behind that, Russia and Belarus actually produce just under 40% of the world's potash supply. So that is a significant amount of supply which will be interrupted and not necessarily be available to export to the places where it's required to increase crop yields. So I think there's a sort of larger knock-on impact here. And also, as we've also mentioned, rising fuel prices, all of this feeds into higher prices for food, potentially food shortages, and quite a disruption, globally as a result of what's going on at the moment.
As you say there, in North Yorkshire where you are, there's a large polyhalite resource which I know is being developed at the moment. But the Comessit project that Emmerson has in northern Morocco, give us more details about how big this is. I think you've got a JORC resource now on this, haven't you? You know pretty much the sort of thing we're dealing with. What are you going to be able to supply to the world when it all happens?
So it's, relative to a lot of the other, larger producers that exist today, we will be relatively small, around 730,000 tonnes of potash produced per year. We've got an initial 19-year mine life from the resource that we have, but that's from less than half of the resource. So we anticipate well in excess of a 30-year operation. We're in the process of doing basic engineering and pulling our funding together. And by the end of the year, hopefully we'll be in a position to be into construction. And then we have a 2-year construction period. So towards the end of 24, 25, we'll be into production, and we'll be at the moment, there's no potash produced on the continent of Africa, so we'll be the first producer on the continent of Africa.
As prices go up, do you see that changing? Do you see other competitors coming into the market to sell into what is, as you say, is a market that's desperate for fertilizers?
Yes, I mean, it's obviously whenever the prices are high, it opens up opportunities for new developments in the potash world. But the time it takes to actually bring a project from sort of exploration and a feasibility level to actually into production, is going to be a 2, 3, 4 year project. And you mentioned the project in North Yorkshire, the Anglo-American project. It's going to be another 3 years probably before that's into operations. So there is going to be a lot of pressure on the market in the time it takes for ourselves and any other projects to get into production.
Yeah, let me just bring up a share price chart of Emmerson, because I think it's interesting in the context of what we've just been talking about as to where you are in the pipeline of development. Currently trading at what, 6.9 pence. You're listed on the London markets. You've got a market capitalisation of just shy of £64 million at current levels. What do you say to investors about what you've got here? You say, yes, look, you've said it's a relatively small project in the grand scheme of things, but as you are so far ahead of anyone else in Africa at the moment, it does seem like you're in a pretty good position. This market cap of 63 million? What's that look like in the context of the mine life, of the mine potential, and the ongoing projects, and how you see investors benefiting from the production of potash?
Well, we consider the current share price, we're vastly undervalued for where we are in the development timeline, and our feasibility study done in 2020 assumed a long-term potash price of an average of around $400 a ton, which gave the value of the company, net asset value, being around $1.4 billion. If you actually use today's potash prices, then the value of this business is just under $4 billion. So we're vastly undervalued compared to where this project will go once we get into production. So we are hugely confident that we'll get the funding in place and address all of the engineering challenges and get the operation into production within a couple of years. So I think we're better placed than pretty well any of the other potash developments out there to actually get into production and benefit and start to feed potash into a market which is desperate for it.
One final question is, of course, is getting to that end point, or the beginning of the end point, trying to get the production up and running. You're going to have the same problems that Sirius had in North Yorkshire. You're going to have a larger partner. Are you likely to be taken over? Is this something you're considering, or are you wanting to forge ahead and raise the money yourself and go ahead and produce as Emmerson PLC?
Well, that is our intention. In comparison to the old Sirius, the now Anglo project, we're on a different scale in terms of the capex requirement. We need an upfront capex of just over $400 million. That was a $4 billion project and would probably be significantly more by the time it's completed. So it's a different scale. We believe that we can raise the money and actually take this project forwards. We are doing that, in partnership. The project's in Morocco. It's really important to us that we work with our Moroccan stakeholders, which we are doing. We take that very seriously, and the benefits have to be felt. The economic benefits have to be felt in country. That is the right way to develop any project anywhere. So, we are placing a high level of importance on that, and we're working with the authorities, government departments, and our partners in Morocco. We intend to use Moroccan companies to develop the project. So, we're very confident, if we do this in the right way, and that is how we approach everything we do. It's all about doing the right things and doing them in the right way. We're confident that we can deliver this project, very successfully.
We look forward to hearing more about that, Graham. In the meantime, thanks indeed for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and it's been great to get an insight into potash production prices and where it's all going to go in the grand scheme of things. That's Graham Clark. He's Emmerson Chief Executive. For more videos from us here at IGTV, join us on Twitter at IGCom, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.